All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time today for our third tip of the month. Today's tip of the month is focusing on customer lookup tool and lease loyalty certificates. I seem to get a lot of questions regarding these two elements of our rebates that are available to us. I did bring in a couple special guests I'd like to introduce. Our first individual is Richard Felix. He is Toyota District Sales Manager. I'm sure some of you have had the opportunity to work with him, but he is with our regional Toyota office. And then I've also invited Quentin Bennett. He is a TFS area sales manager and is able to bring some examples of knowledge on the customer lookup tool and give you some visibility to what that is. I know that a lot of sales managers are more familiar with this tool than office managers, but what I find is that if the certificate isn't printed to begin with, which is the biggest key to this, the whole process. But if it is not, oftentimes office managers are contacting me, needing assistance in locating or being able to acquire a copy of that certificate so they can send in to the incentive support group. So I brought these two individuals to give us some additional insight. So again, thank you guys for being able to attend and provide some training as well. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and start with Rick Felix.
All right, thank you. Everybody hear me okay? See my screen? You see the three titles up there, I hope?
Yep.
Okay, great. So first and foremost, I feel very fortunate for the opportunity to present and to talk to you a little bit about this today, because I think as a district manager, I just view this as an enormous opportunity, which is my first point up there, the free money point. We're going to run through how much it's utilized or not, and then maybe some of the reasons why in the what's your process portion. And then just a real quick discussion of some best practices from a district manager standpoint, to make things easier between the sales desk and the office. I feel very fortunate to have Quentin and Tiffany and Ariel all on the call today, because their knowledge exceeds mine by tenfold. So they'll be able to answer all those, well, how do you, and the why the type questions for us, but hopefully I can give you some of the why should we be doing this. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move forward, and I know we'll open it up for questions at the end. So, money everywhere. So what you have on your screen here is a snapshot of some data about retention, redemption. So what you see there with Kansas City circled on the top and the bottom, the top is the Q1 results, which we have opened and left open for Q2 because of the pandemic and the issues of getting everything reported. But what you see there really is that even we're doing a really good job compared to the nation with our redemptions. You can see we pretty much lead the pack, a second place with 11% redemptions. Which it's always good to be in first or second place, but I see a little bit of room to grow on this. I'm going to call your attention to a couple of numbers a little higher in the column there. So if you look at the TFS return number of 568, that means of people that had an eligible certificate, 568 of them returned to TFS with a contract. So they had a certificate, they returned to TFS, so the overwhelming odds are they should have redeemed a certificate. But we see the number immediately below that at 416, that obviously there's some opportunity in there. So that's 152 customers that returned to TFS but did not redeem a certificate. Now there are some reasons why that might have happened, so we won't call that 100% loss, but that's over $75,000 of money that could have been applied to your deals for the first quarter that just wasn't claimed, wasn't used. You can see the same metrics for the second quarter program down below. You'll see our redemption offer is a little bit lower than the 11%. There's there's a few things weighing into that. One, the quarter's not over. Two, there may be a lot of stuff in process that just hasn't hit this reporting yet. Maybe sitting in your sales towers in your offices to be processed. But the same trend holds true, and it's actually even a little more dramatic here with 327 returning to TFS and 161 redemptions. So there's, again, another little over $80,000 of money that could have been applied to your deals, added to your gross, added to your bottom line, your salesperson compensation, that just wasn't taken advantage of. And again, I know that that number might never get to 100% because of options the customer elects to, but I believe there's a lot of room for opportunity for growth there. And I'm going to go into a little bit more of why I believe that. So this is a naughty list that I have blocked out the names to protect the innocent. But what I will call your attention to is there are dealers in every single region, or excuse me, every single district of this region who just flat out 100% aren't using this system. They aren't looking up customers. They aren't exporting data. They aren't checking every customer to see if they have an opportunity. So this is low-hanging fruit. If you think your name might be on this list, you might want to go visit with your sales desk. And we'll get a little bit more into process as we move forward. The other piece I really wanted to show you is this. This is the opposite side of the naughty list. This is who is using it and how are they using it. Again, I've blocked out the names to protect the innocent and or the guilty, depending on which way you want to look at this. But you can see under the top dealer there are three basic actions: the view certificate, PDF export, and permission query. Now, Quentin's going to get into the how you do all of those and why they're super important, but I will tell you from a district manager perspective, if your dealership isn't doing all three of those, you're leaving money on the table. And I'm going to explain what those opportunities are. And I'm going to leap right into process now. And the thing I always, where I start this question when I'm in a dealership is I look across the desk at usually the general manager, general sales manager, or dealer principal and go, what is your process for customer lookup service? Who does it? Most of the time I get a blank stare back of, or I get a response of, oh, they handle that on the desk or they handle that in the office. When I go to the desk, it's, yeah, they handle that in the office. When I go to the office, they go, yeah, they handle that on the desk. So the reason I'm starting on process is because I think somebody at your store, dealer principal, general manager, general sales manager, should run through it from start to finish. In other words, how we find out the customer has an opportunity, how we apply the opportunity to the deal, and then how we recover the funds or get paid. As a district manager, I've had the experience of having to help a dealer through a breakdown in the process at those areas for each dealer. I can share one story where I get a call from a sales manager and he says, hey, can you tell me if we've got all these redeemed? Can you tell me the last time that they were redeemed? And of course, I'm not as a district manager, I'm not trustworthy enough to be trusted with the information. So I call the person who is trustworthy and on this call, and she says to me, no, they haven't done any since last year. You can probably imagine the feeling in that sales manager's stomach when I relayed that information to him, and we had to go back through the office and figure out what was going on. But because this is not like the normal incentives where we know you sold the vehicle, we know you did a finance contract, you got the subvented rate applied, or you took the cash applied. This requires a different process to being reimbursed. We find that some dealers, quite frankly, are just missing that stopgap of making sure that the funds applied to the contract are actually backstopped. So 4 processes. These are the 4 core things that I think everybody on this call should know how they're done at your dealership. I wouldn't want to be prescriptive because I've seen very different processes work very well for different stores. But the 4 things that you need to make sure are happening without exception are the list needs to be exported. And this can happen even weekly because new things are added to it, new customers, new expirations, things of that nature. But it needs to be exported. and that information needs to be acted upon. When I say export, I mean download all the lists from the customer lookup service of people who have an eligible offer, a lease return, so on and so forth, and act upon it. I don't know if that's salespeople calling, it's a BDC, whatever the case might be for your dealership. But that process needs to happen to make sure that you're taking full advantage of this group of people that may not even know they have this offer. And that they can, you can offer them something they may not even realize exists, might make the difference in a purchase decision. The second one on the left-hand side there is checking each customer. And you say, Rick, I've already downloaded the list. Why in the heck would I need to check each customer? Well, the reality is you could download a list and still have a customer arrive that, say, is from outside your PMA or did business with another dealer. And Quentin can probably define those reasons better for us. But they wouldn't be on your list, but they could be in front of you with an eligible certificate. And if you don't get permission from the customer to look and do that permission query, you could just miss that. And you know, in my nearly 20 years with Toyota, I've never seen a deal go through where the sales manager said, "No, we don't need another $500." So a good practice to get into, and again, can be handled differently at different dealerships, either by the sales desk is usually where this happens, or the sales consultant in some stores have access. Then obviously, you know, after we've used the list to market or brought the customer in or found out that the customer had an offer, we apply it to the contract. This is simple, straightforward. You guys apply rebates or incentives and discounts to the contract all the time. That's not hard. What becomes interesting is the way we apply it and account for it in the contract needs to show up in the office so that they know they have action, or the sales desk knows that they still have action to do to either verify or submit for that incentive to make sure the dealership is paid. And that's the recover the funds from TMNA. So there needs to be a reconciliation process of, we applied this to the deal, did we actually get paid? You all have this process for your finance incentives and for your customer cash and your final pays and so on and so forth. This business portion just needs to make sure it is added in there, because again, I know I'm not alone in this in the district manager land, but there's definitely been multiple dealers with a lot of opportunity where the desk was applying it to the deal and the office didn't know they needed to do anything to recover it. The desk was verifying cash incentives for the sake of conversation, and it was just not used. Some things that I found to be of vital importance at the dealership. And I put this is my last slide, so those of you that are worried about death by PowerPoint or me blabbering on for another hour or so can put those fears to rest. But these are the three things that I would implore you to do. As from a practice standpoint, one, print a certificate. If Mr. Sales Consultant, Mr. Sales Manager, you go into the system, you look at it, see, oh yeah, the customer's got it, jot down the number, move on. Those certificates can be found again, but if you ground the car or the customer buys a contract out or something of that nature, before your office gets it into the office and your office prints the certificate can disappear. In other words, because the offer is no longer out there because the vehicle has been grounded. And now we have a problem with getting reimbursed. So printing the certificate does two things. One, make sure you have it. And two, it'll be that piece of paper in the deal jacket that makes that you can use as a cue to say, okay, did we apply this? Did we submit for it? The certificate back and forth, finding the certificate becomes even more important when we know that these are 30-day from reimbursement. You have 30 days from the time of sale to get reimbursed, which is a much shorter time frame than some of our other incentives. So you don't want to spend that time going back and forth with Quentin or your TFS rep trying to gather information that we at one point in this conversation had. I have the use the space with a dash up there. Now this is something that going through it with Quentin, quite frankly, and practicing for this, we found that we were able to use the spaces or the dashes in the account number or not and still have the information come up in the system. But I've heard from multiple sales managers at multiple places that if they don't type the account number as presented with spaces or dashes when using a permission query, that they may not see anything come up. What this should stay in your mind is if the customer does not have an offer, but you get the system to perform the query properly, it will come up and show you not an offer or not eligible. So until you see that screen, you're not done. And then, as I've already talked about, but I've run into multiple scenarios, and I'm sure Tiffany could tell us about even more. It needs to make sure that this is something that's reconciled on the deal before it's put into eternal storage and file storage to make sure that it's backstopped. There's a lot of different ways to work with this information and this data. If you're not sure where your dealership lies on the spectrum of we're doing everything or we're doing nothing, get with your DM. Those reports I showed you are available to us if we ask for them. We don't always see them firsthand, but we can help you do a little analysis to see what's going on and to make sure that you're taking full advantage of it. The only thing we really can't see is if you apply it to a deal but don't file for reimbursement. We really don't have any way to see that because there's nothing in your system that tells us. So hopefully I've excited you, maybe scared you a little bit, so you have a little bit of emotional connection to where we're at here this morning. But now I'm going to let the real experts take over and tell you the how and the why and the very specific information that you need to get this done. I thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you, Rick, very much. We appreciate, the key points of obviously there's some area of opportunity. What Quentin's going to do is he's going to go through and show us how to access the tool, give us a couple walkthrough scenarios, and then demonstrate some queries with that. But like Rick said, the biggest aspect of the whole process, once you evaluate the process that you have in place to take advantage of the list, print the list, apply it, confirm with the customer, and then try to submit the information to get paid and for the reconciliation aspect of it. The biggest key is to make sure when the customer's there to print off the certificate, because in the past there has been some misguidance that all you have to do is write down the certificate number and include it in your submission, and that is in fact not the case. Key elements on the certificate itself is the lease maturity date to make sure it's eligible and so forth. So again, we can't reiterate enough to print the certificate when the customer's there and include it in the deal. It's better to have it at the beginning than try to recoup it later on down the road. Again, thank you, Rick. With that, let's go ahead and hand this over to Quentin.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me just fine?
Yes.
All right. Thank you all for the time today. I am an area sales manager with Toyota Financial Services. One of our biggest keys and one of the things that we do in our dealer visits is this is a major portion of what we cover and like to cover with every dealership. Just like Rick and Tiffany have suggested, this is something that we feel that, if you're leaving money on the table, you could possibly be missing deals. And that's pretty substantial. Like Rick mentioned earlier, I can't imagine or think of any sales manager that would be okay with not having an extra $500 to $1,000 on a deal to close a deal. So this is very important. But for those of you who know me, I like to keep everything simple. So I'm going to do my best to simplify this process. And hopefully by the end of this call, you'll see that this is not jumping over any hurdles or anything like that. Rather, it's just like Rick mentioned, having a process that should be starting at the sales tower to where every single customer that enters your dealership is being ran through this system, and you're pulling up any applicable offers that they're eligible for. And it's very simple and very important to do. So the first thing I'm going to do, bear with me here. Tiffany, do I have control to share my screen?
Just 1 second. Let me get you there. There you go.
Thank you. All right, so the first thing I want to show you all is I want to show you what the loyalty certificate looks like. This is the certificate that should be printed with every customer. As you can see, the certificate has a contract, has the customer's contract start date, has their payment, tells you when their next payment is due, tells you the number of remaining payments, shows you their lease residual, customer's name, other personal identifying information that I blacked out. And then it also shows you the VIN number, the program type of eligibility, the offer name, the program start and end date, as well as the customer's maturity date, as in the day that the customer should be returning their vehicle. And then the most important piece of information, it gives you that TPT number that should be listed when you send the deal over, or when the sales manager submits the deal over to Toyota Financial Services. All right, so moving along. How do we get to that information? Can you all see my Dealer Daily screen now?
It just looks gray.
All right, bear with me.
Sometimes you have to unshare and then reshare.
All right, I'm trying to pull back up the, bear with me 1 second. All right, thank y'all for your patience. I'm sorry, I'm not used to the WebEx. Let's see here. All right, let's see. All right, so now you should all see the Dealer Daily landing page. This is the page where you're going to log into the financial services side.
Yeah.
So you would go to financial services. And just as long as you have told the system that you're okay with having a one-time PIN that lasts for up to a year, it'll log you right into the financial services side for Toyota Financial Services. If you have not told the system that you're okay with having that one-time PIN, it's going to send you a PIN every single time that you log in. So it's very important you make sure that you choose to have the one-time PIN that keeps you logged in for a year. That'll save you some time. All right, so this is where Rick was just describing to you all how to pull the information, where to pull the information. For training purposes, the information that I'm going to put into the system, because Rick has given me permission to do so, I'm going to put his information into the system. Now, Rick did not originate at this dealership. So the most important piece of information that you're going to have to give the system is you're going to have to tell the system, hey, I do have the customer's permission to pull his account information. And you all can still see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so I will put in the account number. And in the account number, you notice that there is a space. There's not a dash, and we'll do it both ways. Once I select submit, this is the same information that I'm going to get when I pull up the loyalty certificate. It's going to look identical to this. The reason it looks different is because this is a retail account. So if the retail account actually had a promotion on it as well, it will also show you that there's a promotion in the retail account by pulling a customer's payoff quote. All right, that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is through the customer lookup service. When I go to the customer lookup service, that's all I'm doing is I'm selecting the blue hyperlink. That is a hyperlink. It says customer lookup service. In that hyperlink, I am then going to select my category. So I'm going to say, okay, I have a customer's account number. And then I'm going to say I need to have an account number and possible VIN number. Bear with me one second. I'm going to go back to that original screen. All right. I'm just going to explain this portion, okay? So I would have to have the account number and a VIN number in order to pull up a customer that did not originate at my dealership if I didn't pull the information through the customer lookup service. All right? All right, and bear with me one second. I'm going to go back to the original screen. All right. So what I just demonstrated to you are two different ways you can pull up each customer. You could either pull up the customer by the customer lookup service, or you could pull up the customer by the customer payoff quote. Once we're in the customer lookup service, as you can see on this landing page, this is giving you access to all the customers who have an expiring program with your dealership. If you go to expiring campaigns, and you would select that by searching in the middle of the screen under customer lookup service. You can then choose which campaigns you're looking for. My recommendation is to select every single campaign except the termination lease master list. This termination lease master list is not going to be a program that's going to give you rebates and things of that nature. Then I would select OK. And this is going to show you all of the expiring programs and customers that are coming due at your dealership. Under the Export To, this is where you can either pull up a PDF, an Excel, or CSV, which is also an Excel format that gives you the ability to break each category down depending on how you want to distribute this list to your salesman. And there you have it. It's that simple. You want to make sure and print. I'm going to go back to you want to make sure and print your loyalty certificate for every customer when you start your deal. or when the sales manager starts the deal. So this is how your loyalty certificate would look. If you remember how the program looked when I pulled up Rick's information, it was pretty similar to this. But again, because it was a retail deal, it didn't have all of this information that's contained here on the right because it was retail. But if there were any eligible programs for him, it would have also pulled up that information to the right of the payoff quote. And I can't reiterate this enough. This is how simple it is to pull up this information for each customer.
Excellent.
Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Quentin. I appreciate you taking the time to be on the call as well. One last piece of information that I want to share with everyone is I understand this is a lot of material to look at. So I want to show you where we actually have these resources placed. So they are actually on Dealer Daily. And give me 1 second and I will show you where on Dealer Daily that is. 1 second. Here we go. All right. So on Dealer Daily, when you on the dealership side, you click at the top for the Kansas City region in blue, and it takes you over to this communication page. We have these resources listed under marketing and incentives. You can actually go to incentive training information. And then you can go to the tip of the month, which we have here. We've provided the customer lookup system training 2.0, which is actually a step-by-step instructions for it. There's also download instructions for the certificate. And then also one of the questions that I often get is, who is my Toyota Financial Services area sales manager? We've also placed on there the name of the TFS ASM with a list of dealerships that they work with. So if you're not sure, this is where you can locate that information. And there's also a telephone number for that individual as well. So if you ever have to, after the fact, get the certificate information, this is where you would reach out to your TFS ASM and do such. So that information is all available there. We've also placed it in a second area just in case, under incentives and under TFS, under the lease loyalty certificate information. Again, it's been placed there. So a couple different locations for you. You can find that. One of the other things you'll notice that in the WebEx invite, you actually received or attached to it is a link to surveymonkey.com. If you would please take the time to go in there. There's only about 4 questions. Fill that out, give us some feedback on the training. Let me know if you have any additional questions or if there's a certain topic that you would like to cover, and would be happy to do so. And again, I can't thank Rick and Quentin. Can't thank you enough for being a part of the training today and helping out with that. So thank you everyone very much for being a part of this and taking the time. And again, don't forget to fill out your survey.